Owen Mawson, I am terrified that Eddie Howe is going to be the downfall of Eddie Howe because he's got Newcastle United into the Champions League maybe 2, maybe 3 years ahead of schedule. We're sitting here recording this video on July the 11th and the squad is nowhere near strong enough to maintain a Champions League place in the league, but also give the Champions League itself a ruddy good go. Newcastle, as we're sat here, have made 2 summer signings so far. We've got Yankuba Mente in through the door, an 18-year-old attacking midfielder signed from Danish club Odense Bold Club for around €8 million, who scored on his debut for Feyenoord last week, having joined them on loan for a season, so I guess he doesn't really count as a summer signing at all. And of course, the main headline maker for around about that 60 million mark is Sandro Tonali, who is the most expensive Italian of all time. People say that he's unhappy about joining Newcastle United, but you look at his recent Instagram post where he's on holiday on a private yacht with his model girlfriend, and it's clear that the boy is just not a smiler, so he's no doubt over the moon. But we need to now look at more incomings potentially for Newcastle United. I've got a list of 5 positions we need to strengthen before launching a good assault on the Premier League and the Champions League. Owen Mawson, who is someone who does not watch Newcastle on the regular, what are you saying? How many positions do you need to strengthen?
I had down here 2, 3 at max. But I suppose your squad depth is going to be your issue this season, with Europe and going for another push for another Champions League finish in the league. And maybe, run up one of the cups as well. So squad depth, maybe you do need more than 2 or 3. So I've just focused on first teamers that are going to make an impact, go straight into your first 11. And I'm not really worried about squad depth. With me, maybe you have. So I've got 2 or 3. Are still needed here for Eddie Howe's side. Yeah,
we'll get on with the ones that have been linked so far, sort of concrete links on social media and stuff like that from journalists. If that sounds like a bit of an oxymoron, a concrete link. But Harvey Barnes from Leicester for somewhere in the region of £40 million, 13 goals in 34 Premier League appearances for a side who finished 18th last season is fantastic. But over the last 4 seasons, Owen, Harvey Barnes has scored 34 goals, 23 assists. That Phil Foden fella, 34 goals, 17 assists. And Bukayo Saka, 31 goals, 27 assists. So basically, he's the best winger in the league.
I told you when we did our underrated 11s for the Premier League season, I had him in there because no one was talking about him last season. Even though Leicester were poor, he was, the gem. He was the shining light for them. Madison's got the move out first. I imagine he'll be next. Harvey Barnes, 40 million as well. I think it's about the right price. I'm surprised it's not going to be higher towards 50 million, but for 40 million, you're getting guaranteed Premier League goals. He's proved it year on year, and he's still only 25?
25,
24, 25.
Very good Premier League player.
Not in his prime yet as well.
Yeah, well, you hope so. 25, Owen. How long are we going to wait? How long are we going to wait?
But 27, 28 is the peak usually.
But elsewhere, Newcastle's also been linked today with Federico Di Marco from Inter Milan. Apparently, the Premier League club, I've forgotten to write down the source for this, want to find out the initial cost for the left-back. Early stages, but a deal makes a lot of sense if they can get it done. Apparently, they're going to make...
Footballtransfers.com it is.
That's who it was. They're going to make a move earlier in the window, find out what Inter want, and make a move later in the window when Inter start to panic and maybe want some money. He's versatile. We saw what he could do for Inter Milan in their run to the Champions League final. He can play either centre-back or left-back. 25 years of age, 10 caps for Italy. It's a signing that makes a lot of sense for Newcastle. Because, Owen, the first position I feel we need to strengthen as a football club is left-back, because while Dan Burn is absolutely fantastic, Dan Burn is by far and away maybe the player who sticks out the most in the Newcastle team last season as being the one who's not quite at the level, especially in what I think is not his best position. His best position is centre-back, because he is... You always look at a team sheet when they come out and think, oh, God, the winger's going to skin Dan Burn. All ends up, but it never really happens. But when he played centre-back along with Jamal Lascelles in the 21-22 season and Fabian Schär and people like that, when Newcastle was sort of rising out from relegation, he was absolutely fantastic. But the names that have been linked, not as concrete as DeMarco, Kieran Tierney was linked a lot before the season ended, but all that's gone relatively quiet, so goodness knows what's going to happen with that. And Theo Hernandez, which I think's a little bit fanciful because of FFP. We're not like the Saudi Arabian teams who can just throw endless amounts of money at all of the players and get people in through the door. But we'll look at the left-back options that currently are at Newcastle United. We've got Matty Targett, who I feel really sorry for because he was one of the shining lights of the 2021-22 campaign when we signed him on loan from Aston Villa, got him on a permanent deal, then he got an injury at the start of the season, and Eddie Howe basically said, I don't like to change my defensive unit unless I actually have to through injury and whatnot, so he lost his place to Dan Burn, who didn't get injured, and Targett didn't get back in. Then we've got Burn himself. Jamal Lewis is still there. I will get rid of him. He seems like a lost cause, especially considering he was getting linked with Liverpool a couple of years ago. We paid 15 million. He's not good enough. Paul Dummett signed a new 1-year contract. He, by trade, is a left back, although I think his best position is centre back because he's very limited going forward. Then behind them, we've got Javier Manquillo, who I love as a footballer, just bombs on. He's what you want as a full back at Newcastle United, and rounded off all the options is Matt Ritchie. But in terms of quality, a quality left back, we need someone who is better than Dan Burn.
Yeah, I had left back down as one of, I think that was the first position I wrote down, what you need to improve on. Dan Burn, he's a great lad. I'm sure he's great to have around, but I don't think his ceiling is as high or as tall as he is a man.
Whoa, look at you with your analysis.
I just don't think. I think as a centre back, maybe he's got a higher ceiling, but as a left back, he's done a good job. But I think to progress forward in Europe and to sustain a top 4 finish in the league going forward, I just don't think he offers the output. Defensively, he does, but going forward, he doesn't offer the output. So this DeMarco fella, who you have been linked with, 4 goals in Serie A and 10 assists across Europe and Serie A as well. So, he's proven that he's got it going forward. He can fill in as a left-sided centre-back if possible. So, when Trippier's bombing on the right-hand side, which he loves to do, DeMarco can fit in here. The only issue is going to be the price, I imagine, because footballtransfers.com was saying, Newcastle have approached. They don't know what the valuation is going to be, but the transfer market have him listed as 35 million. So do you think they're going to put that much into a fullback?
They're going to have to.
Million.
I don't know if they can, but they're going to have to get someone of the quality who is, better than Dan Burn and also going to be ready for the Champions
League finalist.
Yeah, of course he is. So they're going to have to pay top dollar for whoever they sign if it's going to be like a proper first team player, unless somehow Dan Ashworth is going to do something like he did at Brighton and find, your Matomas and your McAllisters and people like that.
Yeah. I was actually very surprised that Dan Burn only had 1 goal, because I thought he'd be such a threat, an aerial threat off corners.
He's a donkey when it comes to headers,
Premier League. He just doesn't like to get up, does he?
He got a header, I think, against Brighton towards the end of the season, but it's a case of the Mike Williamsons for Newcastle fans who were watching the Pardew era. Every single corner went to Mike Williamson. Every single corner did not go in the goal, and it's much the same with Dan Burn this day and age, apart from that goal, obviously, against Brighton. Yeah. Centre-back is the next area Newcastle need to strengthen. The players who have been linked. Ooh. Mark Gehi from Crystal Palace for around about 60 million. Seems like it's going to be too much money. His teammate, Joachim Andersen, who's another player who's been linked. Harry Maguire's been linked. Let's not touch him with a barge pole. We've got Wolfsburg defender Maxence Lecroix, I think I pronounced that right, who I signed on FIFA in 2020, and I signed him for Ipswich Town because he was rated 71, so he's obviously had a big...
I'll take your word for it, Ross.
A big surge over the last couple of years, and the more concrete link of the last few days is Monaco centre-back Axel Disasi, who I think I've said that right, who Man United also apparently interested in for around about £34 million, but we look at the options Newcastle have once again as centre-backs. I said Dan Botman there. Sven Botman, obviously Rolls Royce of a man. Fabian Schär, absolutely fantastic. Jamal Lascelles came in at Manchester City away after just not playing for the entire season and did really well, but once again I think there's a ceiling for him, and I'm worried about him playing in any sort of Champions League football whatsoever. He's just not that good.
He's getting on in age as well. He's 30? Is he 30?
I think he's a bit younger than that, surely. But
a bit younger than that.
Yeah, but he's a solid Premier League player, I think, but not a Champions League place and Champions League player. And then of course we've got Dan Burn, Paul Dummett can also fill in there, and we've got Kel Watts as well, who's still on the books. He spent last season on loan at Peterborough, but he's 23 years of age now, so I don't think that's going to happen for him. So take your pick out of those names there that I mentioned for a centre-back. We need at least 1 and potentially 2, because while Paul Dummett has signed a new 1-year deal, because Eddie Howe loves having him around the place, he's another name that I'm scared about seeing him on a Champions League team sheet.
Do you think with the issue with FFP, if there's no outgoings from the club and you get in a left back, do you think you will need a centre back? Because surely then Dan Burn could slot in and be your third choice centre half.
That is the
unless he takes the place of Botman or Shaw, but surely with your defensive record last season. those two have to stay as your main centre backs, I imagine.
It's been very weird because despite the defensive record last season, people have just been sort of writing off Fabian Schär in the media, saying, "Oh, they still need a centre back to go alongside Sven Botman." Where Fabian Schär, I know Botman's obviously fantastic, but in terms of a holistic approach to a footballer, I think Fabian Schär offers more. In terms of going forward, he's got a better pass than Sven Botman's got. So I think Fabian Schär's been dirty in the media this year. But of course, the players are there to sort of rotate. And obviously, Bern is versatile. Dummer is versatile. But I do think if we could have both, I'd snap your arm off. But again, with FFP, I don't know if we can have both.
Would you prioritise a left back over a centre back?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But then again, you're worried.
I think if I was Eddie Howe, I would as well.
But you just hope we can't get them both in, because what if? There's always a what if when you're playing more football in a season. What if Botman gets a massive injury or Schär gets a massive injury? Then we are absolutely cream crackered. The next position I think we need is a more of a number 8, a sort of a centre midfielder, because obviously Eddie Howe plays with these 3 combative midfielders. Got one who sits a bit deeper, who last season was Sean Longstaff, who allowed Bruno Guimaraes and Joe Linton, who would swap with Joe Willock, who would spend a bit of time on the left wing, come back into the middle. By and large, I know Isak will play there towards the end of the season, but we have 3 combative midfielders, which is why I wasn't too bothered when we didn't get James Maddison. I forgot how to pronounce his name, the guy who went to Liverpool for 60 million. I was a little bit more bothered about him because he seems a bit more fancy. I don't know why.
Szoboszlai.
Supposedly. But we do need someone who can bomb on from the centre midfield. I don't know who that man is, because they're a dying breed in football. The obvious, when your mind goes back to the I'm a child of the noughties from the Barclays era of the Premier League. Someone who's a bit like Gerrard in the centre of midfield, sort of bombs on, supports that centre forward, and gets 10 to 15 goals a season.
I love a Gerrard comparison, so I'm all here for it. Have you been linked with any centre midfielders? Because I assumed after Tonali, how do you pronounce it? Is it Tonali? I imagine after he come in, that was your midfield, like all your money on the midfield gone. Apart from like wingers. We
haven't been linked with anybody concrete. Conor Gallagher, someone who gets linked, it feels every single window with Newcastle these days, but I don't know if he's he's a good player, but I don't know, he's got a bit of the Loftus cheeks about me at Chelsea. He's not really nailed down that's a weird thing. He's got the Loftus cheeks about him. He hasn't really nailed down a position for Chelsea, has he? So him coming in as sort of someone who Newcastle need to play time and time again. Again, it's a step up on certain options that we do have. You look at what's at the club already, and we've got Bruno, Gillett and Longstaff, Tonali. You think they're going to be the starting 4 if you want, most weeks. Then we've got Willock. Anthony Gordon played more central for England under 21s while getting player of the tournament in the Euros that have just happened, and he was used more centrally by Eddie Howe towards the very end of the season. He got the goal away at Chelsea. Elliot Anderson shows flashes of being a very good footballer, but I don't think he's ready. He needs a loan at maybe a top of the Championship or bottom of the Premier League team, somewhere like that, to get some proper experience. Isaac Hayden's still on the books, but Eddie Howe has confirmed back in May that he's leaving. And Jeff Hendrick's still on the books, even though he should be paying Newcastle a fee to still be on the books, because he is the worst footballer I might have ever seen play for Newcastle. But yeah, I just think the way Newcastle have that midfield set up with the high press, the legs you need to play in that centre midfield, I think burnout's going to be a big thing the more games we play next season. So I'd still think with Tonali, he could play either that Longstaff role, being a bit more withdrawn, or he could play the Bruno or Joe Linton sort of bombing on. He's got everything to his game. I think he's got a set piece as well, so he's going to be a fantastic signing. But I do think we still need one more just to complement either one of those 3 slots in the centre midfield.
See, the way I pitched it was as a 4-3-3 with Bruno as the holding midfielder, Tonali as a bit of the box-to-box replacing Longstaff, and you still had Joe Linton on the left. Joe Linton likes to drift out wide. But he's not really. I know he signed as like a striker, but he's turned into like this insane ball-winning midfielder.
He's Patrick Vieira.
So,
he's Patrick Vieira.
So like, I don't know if he's going to offer the input going forward as you probably thought when you signed him. So maybe you do need more of the goal scoring threat from midfield, because I've got written down here. Like the only issue really with Newcastle last season, not that there weren't many, because obviously Eddie Howe did. Oh, not my pop filter. Eddie Howe did massive things getting his top 4, but 68 goals in the league compared to Arsenal's 88 and Man City's 94. So ways to improve is through goals. That's the way to crack on and maintain a top 4 finish in the league. So goals are needed in the team, like you said, like a Steven Gerrard, Lampard-esque midfielder who can bomb on as a bit of a box-to-box, get goals from midfield. Tonali isn't that really. He's more of the pass before the pass, they get the goal, as he's more of a playmaker. So a goal scorer midfielder is probably needed. Conor Gallagher, was that for a time. He's not really been that for Chelsea. He was that for Palace, so he's a decent player. But I can't think of you splashing out the cash on another central midfielder. I imagine it'll be defensively or out wide.
Yeah, I guess another thing we could say about the centre midfield is Joe Willock is there and could be that guy. But I tell you what it is, watching him, because I went to a fair few games in the second half of the season, especially at St James's Park. Watching him on the left is fantastic because he runs. His strides are so big, he just knocks the ball past the player and just runs by them. It's fantastic to watch and maybe negates him moving more central and being the sort of Joe Willock that was there during that lockdown season when he joined on loan under Steve Bruce and scored every bloody game he played that second half of the season, it felt like. But Joe Willock could be that goal scoring midfielder, but the way Eddie Howe uses him by and large, switching him with Joe Linton off the left, I don't think he probably is. So we do need one of us.
Ross, that game against Spurs, Joe Willock was absolutely sensational. Spurs were atrocious, but Willock was ridiculous.
Talk to me about that pass.
Honestly. I never I knew he was a decent player, but then I watched that game against Spurs and I was like, oh my word, where's he come from?
He could play for England, like he really could. He is that good. I think the next position they're moving on from centre midfield, more of an 8 than a 6, I'm going to call that one. We need another winger. Even if Harvey Barnes comes in, I do think we need another winger. You look at the options here at the club right now. We've got Almiron, who is weird. He has a purple patch and he goes missing. He has a purple patch, he goes missing. Isak was largely employed as a left mid, the sort of the left of an attacking three in the second half of the season, especially when he wasn't injured. So that injury thing is always a question mark and makes me want us to get another sort of winger in as well, just to bolster the options that we have. St Maximan looks like he's going to stay. He's been very cryptic on social media.
Really?
He put a thing up today as we're sat here recording saying people are going to talk but they don't know the facts or something like that, while he's pinging one in for training in the top corner. So hopefully he stays, because I love that man. While I can see the sort of people saying that he's not going to be Eddie Howe's kind of player because he doesn't track back enough and stuff like that, I think if you've got St Maximan, you keep him because he can do things that other players can't do on a football pitch. Then we've got in the second half of last season, especially Jacob Murphy, who was better than anyone could ever expect him, pinging 30-yard goals in against Hugo Lloris for Spurs. So that was a weird one, so I hope he stays around, and he seems like a lovely boy. He's a nice lad to have around the changing room and whatnot. Anthony Gordon is yet again another option who can play out there, although watching him play on the wing in the second half of last season was one of the most frustrating things I've seen as a Newcastle fan in many years. Got himself into so many good positions but just wasted it every single time. Behind them, we've got Matt Ritchie, who is still there, who is still, I think, under contract for another year. I guess you could put him there. He could also play left back, as I said earlier. Garang Kuol, who did not impress on loan at Hearts last season, but did play for Australia in the 2022 World Cup. And as we're sat here, Ryan Fraser is still on the books, but needs to give his head a massive wobble, because yet again, he's been in the Premier League at a football team, and he's fallen out with the coach. He's been banished to the reserves last season, and needs to find himself a new club. So I think a new winger, because while having Jacob Murphy is nice, and while he did do well last season, I'm still not convinced, and I still think getting someone who is more proven, who is more guaranteed to be of that level. And again, you could throw Almiron in there as well, because he was a bit hit and miss all season long, and has been more missed than he has been hit since he's been at Newcastle, if that makes sense. Having someone of that quality alongside Harvey Barnes, having those four, top quality wingers on both sides, it's something that Newcastle still need to do for me.
Absolutely no. After left back, winger was the next thing I had written down as the second position that they desperately need to sign, because goals is as I said before, goals is the only area where they need to improve really going forward. The St Maximin stuff surprises me what you're saying there, because at time of recording on the 11th of July, the Telegraph are reporting that multiple Saudi clubs have been in contact with him since the end of the season.
Maybe that's what he was responding to on Instagram today, saying people don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, possibly is, but it's a move that does make sense, because not only will he be probably demanding and earning a load of money, it frees them more wages and frees more transfer budget for maybe Harvey Barnes on the left, and then maybe another one on the right, or to fill in, like we were saying earlier, another central midfielder or centre back role. Because Almiron is such a funny one, because last season as a fantasy football player you had to have him in at times. But then he went on this dry spell, basically from January onwards, of only getting 2 goals, I think it was. 1 or 2 goals. So he's a strange one. He's improved massively since Eddie Howe has come in. I remember when he was signed under Rafa, and everyone thought he was this gem that Rafa had got for quite a hefty fee, if I remember, like 20, 30 million.
20 million.
Yeah, 20 million. So, so this season he's really showed off how good he is. But yeah, he's not consistent enough. So Harvey Barnes would make sense because you know what you're going to get from him. You know he's going to score your goals. But for an option on the right now, I've got a name here. He's been linked with Liverpool and he's been linked with Chelsea. He's been linked with Newcastle heavily as well. He's seems to be more linked heavily with Chelsea in recent days. But Federico Chiesa from Juventus.
Chiesa, the Italian.
Chiesa.
Yeah.
So he's been over the last 1 or 2 seasons. He's been hampered with injuries. But before that, for Fiorentina and Juventus, he was quite consistent with goals and assists. Heavily involved for Fiorentina and Juventus. He's a right footer, so he usually drifts in from the left like Harvey Barnes. So I don't know if they're too similar of a player to get them both in the side. But Juventus have a financial issue at the minute. They're not playing in Europe, so they're going to want to offload players, and I imagine it'll be going for about 40 million-ish.
Yeah,
that's the rumour price with Chelsea and Newcastle being linked with him. I don't see Liverpool going for a move for him, but Chelsea or Newcastle seem like where he's destined to end up at.
That would be a dream because you go back to Euro 2021, I guess you call it, because it happened in the Euro 2021. He was one of the standouts for the Italian team and has been in Europe for a fair while now. So having him on board at Newcastle, much like Tonali, a statement signing, but it depends if we can or not with FFP and whatnot. Other names that have been linked with the club are Diaby from Leverkusen, who's been linked for about a year now, but nobody's made the move. Again, I've not really seen him play, but he was linked with Arsenal as well. Arsenal fans seemed happy to get him on board, so why not as a Newcastle fan? Let's get him in. And then also, Havica Kvaratskhelia. I hope I've said that right. I don't know if I have, but that lad from Napoli, who everyone calls Lionel Messi II, get him in.
Oh, yeah. When Liverpool played them in Europe last season, he looked brilliant in that game, and there were rumours that we were linked with him at the time, which turned out to be false. But yeah, he's a good player. I mean, compared to the market you were shopping in last summer to this summer, it's just the worlds apart. So Tonali's the first one that you got on board, and it seems like any of these signings or the names that you're linked with are going to make an improvement to the starting 11, not just the squad as a whole.
Yeah,
which is what you want, really.
Hopefully, yeah. But the last and final position we need to strengthen, and maybe the one we need to strengthen the most outside of left back, is centre forward, because the options are Callum Wilson and Isak. Isak also plays there from time to time. St. Maximin used to play there under Steve Bruce, because Steve Bruce used to say, well, to put 10 players behind the ball and just give the ball to St. Maximin, that'd be my tactic. But we've got Wilson, we've got Isak, we need at least one more. I don't know who that is. I would like a sort of different profile of centre forward, someone who can still play that up front but maybe has a bit more pace than Callum Wilson, who I don't know if, okay, was it Brighton, I think he showed this burst of pace where I thought his leg was maybe going to drop off. It was terrifying to watch him go that quick, but we know he can do stuff with his back to goal. The guy scores goals. I've got no complaints about Callum Wilson outside of his injury record. That's always going to be the concern with him. Isak playing up there. Eddie Howe's not found a way, unless we've been... I remember there was a game where we were 1-0 down to Southampton at home in the second half of the season, where he brought on Wilson at half-time, and he played the two up front there with Isak and Wilson, and it looked all right. But since then, it didn't really happen with them both in the starting 11 at the same time. Isak had to go out to the left. So I don't know who to suggest as a name. We've been linked with maybe Tammy Abraham in the past. There was that lad from I've forgotten his name now. What the hell was his name? Did I write his name down? The lad from we got linked with last summer, who might have gone to West Ham as well. I can't remember who it was now. Someone. No, he didn't go to West Ham, but he got linked with West Ham as well. Someone from Leipzig, one of the Red Bull clubs. I've forgotten his name completely, but he was also linked. I'll tell you who I wouldn't take a punt on, because we're looking at someone just to bolster the squad. We're looking for someone who can do a job, 10, 15-minute bursts at the end of the game.
Who is it, Ross? Who is it?
Jamie Vardy. I'm not even taking the piss.
He's turned down and moved to Saudi.
He has. I know he's getting on. I know he might be 38 at the time of recording. He's definitely at least 37. He still could score a goal for Leicester in the second half of the season. They were starting him from the start. He won't have to do that in Newcastle. He's English. That helps a lot as well for reasons.
It does.
So getting him in is, the last little hurrah for his career for a season until we get maybe more funds available for next summer, where we can spend a bit more, hopefully with a good position in the Premier League once again, hopefully with a good run in Europe as well. I think get someone like Jamie Vardy in. I don't know if I'm being stupid.
No, well, He's not going to leave Leicester now, surely. He's had his chance to leave Leicester many times.
If Newcastle come knocking, he's not going to turn us down, surely.
Eddie Howe, sweet talk, and Jamie Vardy.
Mm.
I mean, possibly. You want someone with experience. Callum Wilson, as good as he is, and he is a great goal scorer, but you can't trust his injury record, his fitness. Isak, same again. Although I think long term, Isak will be your main central striker. I think that's going to be the plan going forwards. So maybe you don't really need a striker. If you do, it'll be a backup option, I imagine.
That's all we need, just a backup.
Because you don't want to be splashing out too much money when you've got more priority positions to get. Your wingers, your centre, your left backs, and whatnot.
Anyone got Liverpool for a loan? Just get
a striker.
Just put the call in with Origi for a quick loan. Move to Newcastle for a season.
Hey, Diogo Jota seems to be. I mean, I love Diogo Jota, but he seems to be falling down the pecking order. Even though he's not done. He did go a year without scoring. Okay, but he was injured for most of it. So apart from that, it seems like he's fallen down the pecking order. So maybe, but again, you're looking at like 50 million, and we're not going to be selling him for anything less. And Newcastle, I don't think will splash that much cash on another striker.
No, we don't need. We just need that one just in case there's a big injury to Wilson. We just need that backup option just to bolster the squad.
But he's just retired. You bring him back.
Who?
Zlatan. Get Zlatan back in the Prem. Come on, you want a bit of experience. I think of the social media gain that you're going to get from Zlatan coming in.
Hey, if there's one man who can get that done, it's Tonali. He was in tears at that retirement bit for Zlatan, wasn't he? So get him on. Tonali, get the phone out. But just in case you sat there shouting at your screen thinking, Ross, why have you not mentioned this position? Goalkeeper, I think we're fine with Pub, Dubravka, Karius did well in the cup final. He's a fine third choice goalkeeper.
He did.
He did.
I was made up for him. I saw the goals go in, but then I was like, he's not actually at fault for anything, really.
He couldn't do anything for both.
No. And his first game in like a year or two.
Exactly. He's a fine third choice. Right backs, Trippier, obviously. Kraft, it depends how his massive injury last season affected him because he showed great form in the second half of the 2021-2022 campaign when Kieran Trippier got himself an injury, so it depends how that one. He's a good sort of first choice backup for a right back. Mankia's there, who I spoke about earlier. I love them guy as well. Harrison Ashby was signed from West Ham in January. Never really seen him play, but he's the other option at right back. So I think we're fine for this season at right back. Where else are we? That was it, wasn't it? I basically said we need to strengthen everywhere else.
Yeah, we've covered it. So let's say you've got three positions to pick from on your starting 11 to improve. Where you going?
Left back.
If you're Eddie Howe.
Left back straight away. I think we need another centre half who's closer to Botman and Shaw than Lascelles, if that makes sense. And for me, a striker. We need another backup striker because a season is long, especially when you're in the Champions League. So there we go, Owen. That's another video in the can. Hopefully more to come with this home setup. It's lovely.
Exciting times. I'll get an actual light next time.
Get on Amazon Prime Day. Anyway, thank you for watching. Let us know in the comments down below who you think Newcastle need to sign before the start of the season. I've been Ross Tweddell, joined by Owen Mawson, and we'll see you next time.